like a spider and he looks like a bug. But we should all just give him one big hug. Look out, ooh, here comes Spider-Man.
So, did Spider-Man No Way Home live up to the extremely high expectations that me and everyone else in the world had? Yes, absolutely. And here I am, and I'm going to be talking to you about the movie with a lot of spoilers. So if you for some reason haven't watched it yet and you clicked on this video, don't watch it. Go watch the movie first and then come back.
The entire world is about to forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Oh my God, Ned, he's my best friend. Oh, my Aunt May should really know.
Stop talking!
Pizza time.
So I want to begin with the positives of this movie, and the first point that I want to talk about is that it's definitely the best MCU Spider-Man movie. It's so refreshing that for the first time ever, the story does not revolve around Peter's relationship with Iron Man. I also like the explanation of how the villains got to this world, because I was really worried about, executives just trying to do something like what happened with Spider-Man 3 and just put a bunch of villains and try to just do what they thought that the fans wanted, but actually just end up making a movie that was very convoluted. And even though there's many characters, there's even Daredevil showing up in this movie, it feels very balanced in my opinion, and it definitely feels like it's a story about Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Like I said, this movie is very fast-paced, and I really appreciated that. There's no unnecessary or filler scene in my opinion. Like, even before the villains showed up in the movie, I was really enjoying this movie, and I was thinking, well, if for some reason all the leaks that I saw online were fake and Andrew and Toby are not gonna show up in this movie, I'm still really enjoying this movie. But luckily they did show up. So talking about the villains, like I said, I really appreciated the excuse that they had to get all of these villains in the movie. It was just amazing to see not just Dr. Octopus but also Willem Dafoe on screen, and surprisingly I actually really enjoyed Electro. Sandman was always a good villain, and the Lizard. But overall I think that definitely the best one out of all the villains was the Green Goblin, and I think that it was pretty, it was teased that the Green Goblin was gonna be the main bad guy in this movie, and he definitely is. And I always loved his over-the-top acting, but I feel like in this movie, it's definitely over the top, but it feels earned, it feels justified. And also the acting is just top notch. I enjoyed every second on screen of Willem Dafoe. But in my opinion, definitely the best thing about this whole movie is Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield being sort of mentors for Tom Holland. And yeah, there's a lot of fan service, but I feel like the whole story is pretty cohesive, and I feel like even though, like I just mentioned, there's a lot of fan service, it makes sense. The story is a good story, and I really appreciate that they sort of embrace the more weird plot. It feels like you're actually reading a comic book. And one of my biggest issues with Marvel is that even though they have a very specific kids friendly humor always, like this line about Scooby-Doo this crap, a lot of times it feels like Marvel is ashamed of how silly these characters can be and the stories can be, and I don't like that. It feels like in some parts they try to make these characters very silly and joking a lot, but then they also restrain themselves a lot. But not in this movie. I feel like they finally got the balance right in between those two things. And to be honest, I'm like, any movie that has these three Spider-Man is gonna be enjoyable for me. Tobey Maguire was definitely the highlight for me in the movie, but I also really appreciated how they kind of hinted that Andrew Garfield had more deeper issues, more emotional issues than we actually thought last time that he was on screen. And I really like the chemistry between the three Spider-Man, and how they understand each other better than anyone else, and therefore they can actually help each other and give each other the advice that they needed. And I really appreciated that friendship that they had. It's just amazing. Another really good thing that this movie has, in my opinion, is that even though the last fight is at night, I feel like it looks really good. Marvel usually makes really ugly looking movies. Anyone knows that, except for, like, I don't know, Guardians of the Galaxy and a couple other exceptions. But this movie, I actually like the color grading, and the final act. It looks really cool. I like the colors that they went for, and yeah, I think the third act was really good. It had a lot of payoff, and it did not feel like it was not earned. And I'm saying that because there's a lot of fan service, but like I said, it definitely feels like we deserved it. There definitely was build up for this, and it's really good. And one of my favorite things about this movie is that they don't just try to get rid of these characters, the villains, and just, send them home. Peter actually tries to help them out so they don't die. And even though the villains act, kind of cartoonish in this movie, I'm gonna talk about that in a little bit. I don't know, it just feels right. It feels really good that they actually have these bad guys that are not entirely bad. Some are just scared and they don't want to die, so they do questionable things. But now I want to start talking about the bad things, in my opinion, from this movie. And the first thing is just what I mentioned before, and it is that even though I loved all the characters and I loved the Green Goblin and I think he was the best villain, the other characters felt very cartoonish. They felt like all the characters were making jokes, and it feels like they were not respecting them, even though they were villains and they were dangerous. It just really bugged me that for some scenes, especially when they first show up, all of these villains, it just feels like they're not, like, Peter and Doctor Strange are not taking them seriously at all, and that really bugs me. And even though I feel like it's not as bad as every other Marvel movie's humor, it really bugs me. The fact that sometimes the acting performances of all the actors, they feel so staged, and I feel like sometimes they make pauses just because they know that they just said a joke and the audience in the movie theater is gonna laugh. So it really feels sometimes kind of like a sitcom when it comes to the humor, and I don't like that. Also, I like the movie overall, and I mentioned that I really like the pacing, but there's like 2 scenes that, in my opinion, are way too quick. And when you have such a fast-paced movie, that's definitely gonna happen. But like, I just feel like they should have taken more time with a couple of scenes, especially the scene in which Norman Osborn is trying to get rid of the Green Goblin persona when he's talking to himself, and he's trying to resist. And I just feel like that could have been developed a little bit more. But when you're at 2.5 hours, you definitely are gonna have to cut down a lot of scenes. You're gonna have to even delete some scenes. So I understand that, but it definitely bugged me. Also, I feel like for a chunk of a movie, Doctor Strange is definitely as important in that chunk of a movie as Peter is, and it sort of reminded me of how the first and second movies are very based on not just Peter but also on Tony Stark. It just felt like they were co-protagonists, and that this was a movie, not a Spider-Man movie, but a movie about Doctor Strange and Spider-Man equally. But once Doctor Strange was out of the picture for, like, I don't know, an hour of the movie, it went back to being a story about Peter Parker. Finally, the last thing that I didn't like about this movie is the fact that they sort of changed how the spell worked in the end, because they try to make it and try to do the spell at the beginning of the movie, and it goes wrong, and then eventually they're like, okay, Doctor Strange, you gotta do this spell, but actually the way it was supposed to be done, everyone in the world has to forget about me, even my girlfriend and you and everyone. And the thing is, they changed it, in my opinion, just to make this ending more bittersweet, because in the first time that they tried to make the spell, it was only going to make everyone forget Peter's identity, and that was it. But now at the end, for no explanation at all, the spell had to change a little bit so that it would be powerful enough, and the way that it changed did not convince me, because in this second spell that they did and actually worked, they actually had to make everyone forget about Peter Parker as a whole, like completely disappear. Nobody's gonna remember that they went to high school with him, that they knew him. No, and it really bugs me that that was not gonna be what the spell did. And now at the ending, in order to make this more heartwarming and bittersweet, they had to actually make things a little bit more hard for Peter. And I like the ending a lot. I like the third act, but that little thing, it just really bugged me. And I don't want this to be a very, very long video, so I'm just gonna give you my final thoughts. First of all, I love this movie. I really want to watch it again. If I could, I would just go tomorrow to watch it again. If I could have watched it again as soon as it was over, I would have. I love this movie. However, if there's something that I want to do with my channel, is to be completely honest with you and tell you when I like a movie, but I still don't think that it's as good as, you know, other people may think. I also want to mention again that it's definitely, in my opinion, Tom Holland's best Spider-Man movie in the MCU, and I really hope that we see more of them, because there's been some articles online where they question if Tom Holland's gonna make more Spider-Man movies or not, and I'm sure this is gonna be a big success, this movie. So I think that he's gonna be fine, and that he's still gonna be Spider-Man for a long time. But yeah, I really hope that's the case, because this movie was the perfect Tom Holland movie for the MCU. I feel like it's not as good as Spider-Man 2, but it's really close to being as good as that one and Into the Spider-Verse, because, you know, I just talked to you about what I think didn't really work out for me, and these things could have been fixed, and I feel like this movie could have been easily as good as Into the Spider-Verse, but it is what it is, and I really love the way this movie turned out to be. So anyways, what do you think about this movie? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know down in the comments. Please subscribe and all that, and yeah, I'll see you next time.
A Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves, or draws a rat flies.